The Drum Candy Podcast is brought to you by Drum Factory Direct.
What is up, everyone? Welcome into episode 11 of season 3 of the Drum Candy Podcast. This is your host, Mike Dawson, coming to you from Drum Factory Direct in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This week's guest is the great drummer, percussionist, multi-instrumentalist of the American roots band, the Wood Brothers, Jano Rix. The Wood Brothers just put out a new record very recently, The Heart is the Hero, and on it, Jano does a lot of really cool stuff. The sounds are incredible, the playing is really cool, and he's also doing double duty, playing keyboards and drums at the same time. And the whole record was recorded live to analog tape. So it's a really cool listen. This is a fun interview. I didn't put two and two together as we were talking. He keeps talking about his father being a professional drummer in New York. His father is Luther Rix, who was the drummer for the Broadway version of Tommy, the Who musical. So there's a bit of a connection there. He talks about being a kid and you know, messing with his dad's kit, who he must have been practicing for Broadway shows. So kind of interesting. I don't know why I didn't put that together while we were talking, but so this is a cool story. We're in his studio, so his gear's there, and we dig into the new record and his approach and this interesting combination of drums and percussion. So anyway, let's get to it with Jano Rix.
What is this space that you're in?
I'm in our studio. Yeah, I share this with the Wood Brothers and Brooke Sutton, our engineer, who does all our records. And so it's our, this is like the B room. This is kind of like the storage room. And
Okay.
And we make our records here, and I'm here making a record with another guy right now.
Oh, nice.
We're doing this on lunch break.
Very cool. Was the new Wood Brothers record done there?
Yep.
Nice. I was just listening to it on repeat for the past couple of days. It's a beautiful record.
Oh, nice. You have the Heart is the Hero, the one that's about to come out. Nice.
Yep. Yeah. So did I read correct that was recorded all to tape, 16 tracks?
Yeah.
How did that go down? Was there any overdubs at all? Or was it all live on the floor?
There were overdubs, but
okay.
The overdubs tended to be limited to often just our background vocals and then one or two other things, because we were at track 15 and 16.
Right.
So,
I sound like there might have been. Was there any percussion overdubs, or were you just kind of creative with the panning?
No, there are. Let me think. There's not a lot, but I play Shuitar, and if you know what that is, or if you don't, I can explain it. That and drum set together on a few things, and sometimes it's a little confusing because I'll play almost the same part on them. You know.
Oh, okay.
Trying to remember some things. I think one thing we like to do is track, like standing real close to each other with me playing Shuitar and them playing either acoustic instruments or whatever, electric instruments. And then I'll overdub the drums through the whole track.
Oh, interesting.
Which growing up, I thought you just don't do that.
Was it hard to go back and put drums on top of it or under it?
No, amazingly not. No, I learned that about myself a few years ago. It's probably on a Wood Brothers record that, this works great. Before that, I was kind of like, no, everyone plays to the drums. Like you have to, just for like the little things and feel like you're going to want to, and no.
Well, I have a bunch of questions about your setup and your gear, but let's talk about the Shuitar. Sure. What is that thing?
I wish I had it here, but it just got picked up because we're about to leave on a tour. It's a shitty guitar that got turned into a percussion instrument. My friend Matt Glassmeyer invented the first one. Gosh, like 20 or 30 years ago with a guitar he found in his garbage outside his apartment in Brooklyn. And So yeah, it requires a ring on your wedding ring finger to play on the side, a very heavy one that's eventually going to break through the side of the guitar. And but anyway, yeah, I spent many, many years pretty much like every day, like changing it and working on it and graphing out pickup placements on it. Like,
Oh, wow.
It's, trying to invent an instrument and then have it be able to amplify in a large venue well and not feedback and have a balance of all the different drum set parts of it. It was a real bitch, but it's been in a good place for a while, and we haven't changed it. And yeah, I can kind of do all drum set things on it. And the original impetus for me to build my own and start messing with it was we were doing a lot of radio spots when records came out with the Wood Brothers. I did play one before that, but it's so much easier to walk into a radio studio where they have maybe 3 mics, and we can do it all around 1 mic with that because it blends volume-wise perfectly with upright bass and acoustic guitar and our vocals. So, and it goes on the overhead of a plane.
Right.
So just show up, and if we need to get to a radio studio at 9 a.m, just bam, I can play all my drum shit.
So how many songs on the new record started with you on Shuitar versus your drum set?
Ooh, you're going to make me look up the new record now. I'm unprepared.
Hey.
I don't. It's one thing about me, like once I've done it, I kind of have no clue. I don't remember.
Well, that's not good because I've got other questions. But
oh, crap. Yeah, I should have done my research.
I mean, is it kind of standard practice, like learning and writing, that you have that first, or?
No, we're all over the map with it. Let me think. Actually, could it be that Hard as the Hero? Hard as the Hero is drums and Shuitar, I believe, the whole time, but that might have been added second. Kitchen Floor is one. Rolling On, I can't remember. That actually might have been Shuitar first. Crap, I don't know. You're asking the wrong guy. You should ask like Oliver Chris. They'll probably remember everything I played. But oops, sorry, that was my snooze, so I didn't miss this. Sorry, in the middle of the session. Okay, yeah, I think there's might have just been 1 or 2 on this record that started that way. Yeah.
So, what is your like? I guess who brings in the song ideas, and then how do you go about establishing what you're going to play on it?
Well, it's become more and more collaborative with the Wood Brothers over time. At the beginning, especially before I joined the band, which was over a decade ago, like Oliver came to it with a bunch of songs that he had written over his life and with his previous band. But now we all bring in ideas and they do the lyrics almost exclusively. But like a song like Line Those Pockets, I just came to the studio and recorded a bunch of musical ideas on keyboards and drums, and I sent it to them. And Oliver had these lyrics that he had written that were over a real folk kind of thing he had going that he was never happy with, and he just put them over the music I wrote. So yeah, it's kind of all over the place, and we live all over the place now, so we kind of pass things back and forth. Yeah, so sometimes it's like that, and we wrote a bunch of it backstage on the tours before we made the record. So we did a lot of that. Yeah.
Then what about building out whatever you're going to play on a given track? Do you usually tend to start with one thing, or how does it build up?
Like how we arrange it as a group? You mean just generally, or me
Your
particularly?
drum parts, because there's never, it doesn't sound like there's a consistent, like, you're always messing with different sounds. So how does it get to
Right.
that? How does this track have shakers, and how does this one have kit?
Right. We kind of approach recording each song in whatever way we think is going to be cool for that song. However, on this record, we really wanted to play everything live. So our idea going in was we rehearsed on the road. We were rehearsing in dressing rooms. We were rehearsing at sound checks because we haven't done that. We've done a lot of writing in the studio on previous records, and lots of the last record was a lot of overdubbing and piecing and cutting up improvisations we did. And this one, we kind of wanted to go back to the Muse kind of vibe and, play it live. Even we were going to try to sing all the background vocals and lead vocals and everything live. But of course, we're in here and we have our own studio. So then it's like, oh man, this would sound cool in the A room. So then we moved all the drums into the A room, and another thing we captured even more on this record than the last, I would say, is the drums keyboards kind of circus trick I do live on for most of the night now. It's like more than half the songs, I would imagine. So like Line Those Pockets is like me playing a whirly with my right hand and the rest of the drums with my left, with the rest of my body, just because it makes me play simpler with everything and come up with things I wouldn't if I had all my limbs on both instruments. It just play more crap, and they love that too. They push me towards that, I think on that one, I was like, like I'm just writing the parts right here. I was like, like this would be so much easier if I could just overdub this consistent like reggae offbeat thing and like, be able to function with the rest of my brain. But I don't know, it comes out great. Same thing on Worst Pain of All. That was a new one. That was piano on my right hand, because it sounded really great on the upright piano. So we rolled the piano in, but then there wasn't enough room for me to really get the kick drum and everything. So that's like a suitcase. And just like, I got this really low volume little kit together where I was kick drum was a suitcase, and So we're kind of all over the place with that kind of stuff.
What is the miking for your drums on this?
We joke that ever since Alabaster that I only get one mic.
Nice.
That's one mic and one of our favorite drum sounds we've ever gotten. We tried to go really minimal. Number one, we just like the sound. Nothing beats that when you can do it, when it works.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of work on the front end, just mic placement. I'll change my drum kit and the way I set up everything so nothing's too close to that mic on a song, So, the toms might have to be over here on this side of my hi-hat, or the cymbals might have to go way further out, just because the kick and the snare sounds so cool with one mic just kind of between them out front, So I can't cover up the top of the snare with a tom there,
right?
Or a crash cymbal right there or something like that. But that's not to say we mic'd this all with one mic. I would say we did a lot of Glyn Johns, tom side, overhead, kick, and either a mono or a snare. There's not a lot of mics because we didn't have a lot of channels either. We got 16 tracks, which sounds unbelievable, and we love the process of working on it even more, but it's very limiting. So a lot of stuff like that. We used a lot of 57s as the overheads too.
Really?
Yeah. Our engineer might remember more than I, but yeah, we've been really into that lately.
What is that giving you versus a condenser or a ribbon mic or something?
Maybe it's just combined with our tape machine. It gives you everything you want in the sounds I'm making, and it kind of mixes itself. Those mics have you don't get too much low end out of them. The top end isn't brittle and crisp that much. It's just you get a lot of punch. I'm using a lot of short sounds for the most part on this record. And we also talked a lot about 70s records that we loved before going in to make this record. We were rolling off a lot of low end. The kick sounds are real short, single head, just like without a lot of low end. Just listening to a lot of old records that just groove so hard. And they have low end, they just don't have a lot of subs. It doesn't get mushy down there. So yeah, I think that informed some of our choices to try something like 57s for overheads.
Very cool. Does the piano get its own mic, or is it part of your drum set?
The piano gets its own mic.
Okay.
Which is, I think, part of also why I had to get away from the whole drum set and play like a suitcase, and like I think I had a snare with a bunch of folders on top of it and a towel, and that's like for one of those tracks for Worst Pain, because it was softer and wouldn't bleed into the piano mics as much. And we're accepting a lot of bleed in this process, but trying to mitigate it. I think we tried making the piano from the back, upright piano, and then it just sounded so much cooler with the front open and a mic I can't stop this alarm from going off. It's not on anywhere. Well, that might just keep happening. Sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah. So yeah, it got its own mic, but it was like out a little ways from it in the front. So I had to quiet down my drums. I don't know. I've spent a lot of time engineering things. I would never hire myself out as an engineer, but I do enjoy it, and I know quite a bit about it. So I think when I go in to play drums, rather than being a drummer and like, this is the way I play, this is how I set up my drums, like make it sound good, I'm totally down to be like, oh no, that sounds really cool. I guess since I have an interest in that, if something's in the miking technique, if it sounds really cool, but something's too loud in it or too brash, I would rather change my setup, even how I set up the drums, to accommodate a miking technique that I think is going to sound awesome. So I'm more prone to that. And I like to endlessly tinker. So it's not like I kind of have a way I set up my drums and this is my thing. So that's kind of more my approach in the studio.
So how is your, I mean, you kind of answered it, but like the way you play live versus the way you play in the studio dynamically, or will the parts be different?
Yeah, the parts are different. Yeah.
Okay.
We never go in with the Wood Brothers thinking about how we're going to recreate something live and be like, oh, but how are we going to do it if we added strings or a horn section to this? It's just like you make some things that make a musical product that you love, and then we just try to recreate those gestures live. It's like, ooh, those horn parts, can we sing some of those? Or maybe like, it's just like a musical gesture. and we just work it until we have just this cool musical gesture, but it might be on different instruments. Maybe I'm playing on keyboards. Maybe it's the kick drum and the bass accentuate a line that was once played by a high-end instrument, or something. So yeah, we don't worry about that. And I think our fans like that they're going to see a new arrangement. We change our arrangements like every year or so. Everything's constantly evolving, and a song will go out of rotation for a few years. When we bring it back, it's like, ooh, let's do this differently. So
how did the keyboard get incorporated into your drum set, and why not just bring in another person?
Right. Well, that was pretty early on, and when I first did it, we were traveling, I don't think even in a Sprinter van or a van. I think we were in a minivan. And I ordered a melodica because I was like, well, I'm a keyboard player and I'm not doing this at all. Like, what could I do that wouldn't take up any space in our pack? And so then it was like when I was playing Shuitar, I'd play, and then certain parts I would just play melodica on. They didn't even know I played keyboards before that. And then that grew to where I had the melodica on the right of me, of my drum set, and the tube attached to the mic stand. And so for certain parts, I'd play that. And that was really funny to try to learn that the first time, because sometimes I'd be playing, I'd put down my stick, I'd go to play that, and then the coordination would just get so discombobulated that I'd like blow, because you got to blow into the melodica. I'd just blow into the mic. And no sound would come up, and I'd be like, oh, why am I doing this? Like, why did I agree to do this?
That's a whole other level of coordination.
That was pretty funny. I remember that happening once. I was just like, oh man. But yeah, it evolved from there. So it would be just like a couple little parts during the set. And then I had this dream to have either like a clav or an analog synth that I would program to be really percussive. And it could really mostly take the place of my right hand in traditional drum set kind of stuff. So hi-hat kind of stuff, ride cymbal, that kind of timekeeping part of it. But maybe where I dug into the notes, they would have a little more length to them, or pitch would become involved with them more. But if I hit them real short, staccato, it would just sound like a rhythm part. That was my dream. Somehow create a situation where my right hand became on the keyboard, but it still did drum set stuff, but could become melodic. And then we'd just be in the studio and be like, oh, this would sound really good with B3 or piano on it. And so I'd do all these things, and then live would be like, well, I can make a sound that does that. And so I never really achieved that initial inspiration. It just it went in a totally different direction where I'm like taking solos and playing the drums. But it's cool. I think the best things come out of like aiming for something and then missing. And then whatever you come up with, that's like your thing.
So what came first for you, piano or drums?
Drums. Yeah. My dad's a drummer.
Okay. So were you playing drums your whole life?
Yeah. There's like cassette tapes of me when I was like 3, 4.
Okay, like, cool.
Yeah.
So when did piano become a thing?
Piano became a thing. I mean, I was still young. I was 6. And I remember the day we had a piano in our house, and I went to it, and just with my fists, I just started playing rhythms on it. And they said, do you want to take piano lessons? I was like, okay. I don't know. And thus that started all the way through college, like doing piano.
Oh, wow.
I never
Cool.
studied drums formally. I just learned from my dad. He gave me a couple lessons. I remember how to hold the sticks and some basic technique stuff. And then I would just watch him on gigs. But I went to piano lessons, and yeah, I always loved the drums. I would go down, play the drums for 4 hours, just, turn on Zeppelin. And I was like, I need to learn this,
Mm-hmm.
And yet piano was like pulling teeth. I would have the egg timer on top of the piano, like set for half an hour, and then it moved up to an hour, and I'd just be like, oh, my scales. So I have a funny relationship with the keyboard instruments. And then I went to college for jazz piano. That's what I studied.
Oh, wow.
Performance in Miami. That's
So
my
wonder why you approach drums from a fun, let me learn songs, and then piano from a let me do all the formal technical studies. Why not just play piano for fun?
I think, to be honest, I never really wanted to play piano. I wanted to play drums for sure. But I wasn't into piano players very much. There's a few. I can still count just a few on one hand that I love. But maybe it was because my dad was a drummer. I just connected with the drums, and I was like, Stuart Copeland, I have to learn how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Harvey Mason, I need to learn his part. I would learn parts exactly, I would just try to get feel and everything, sounds. And I think piano, my dad's a professional musician, and I think it was drilled into me that piano, if you wanted to be a good musician, you should learn piano. And you should learn harmony, specifically jazz, and I agree with that to some degree. Like I know all this stuff now, and I do use it again, but I think I don't really know why I was taking piano lessons that whole time. I started studying it when I was 8 with this teacher who was so serious, and we lived outside of Manhattan. They left when I was little, but we would drive into the city, and I would study with them every week till I was 14, until I finally was like, yeah, I want to give this a rest. But
wow, that's a lot.
He was so serious. I remember when I was 8, it was like I couldn't get beyond the first note of like a classical piece because I'd hit the first note. He'd be like, tension in your arm. I'd hit the first note. He'd be like, your pinky. I'd hit the first note.
Oh,
he'd be like, your wrist. He's like, more supple than your wrist. Like, I look back on it, and I was like, this guy was insane. Like, we'd spend months on like the first page of a piece, just like trying to get it perfect. So yeah, it wasn't that fun. Yet I just felt like this is what you have to do to be like an excellent musician. So I stuck with it, and I did learn a lot, in the end.
That's an amazing story. And yet you're a professional drummer. I guess your keyboard playing is now fully incorporated, but
it's fully, well, yeah. Yeah. And then I went to University of Miami and the jazz department, and I was just jazz piano major. I never even played drums for the school ever, unless someone asked me to like play on their senior recital or something.
Wild.
Yet almost every band I was in while I was there, I was playing drums.
That's amazing.
And when I got out of there, I was in this band called the Gabe Dixon Band for like a decade. And I was playing drums, and I actually stopped playing piano and keyboard instruments for 10 years. I didn't touch one. Like, I just had enough. I just didn't know a fun place. I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I just had all this jazz technique and this crap that would come out of my fingers, but I had lost touch with what inspired me on the instrument.
Mm-hmm.
But drums, it was just, purely passion the whole time.
Amazing. What was your first drum set?
Oh man, I wish it was here. I was thinking of this interview. Oh, I have one. All right, this wasn't mine, but it was my dad's. Let's see if I can turn the camera here. I'm excited because so this was the kit my dad had set up in the basement. He cut down the hardware to make me a small version when I was little.
Nice.
And yeah, so he was going through the attic, going through drums, wanting to get rid of stuff. And I was like, can I have the 68 Slingerland Tangerine Satin Flame drums you still have left? He sold most of the kit, but he just had 2 kick drums left from it and 1 tom. I don't see how to turn my thing. How do I? Oh, here we go. Here's the 1 tom that's left. But yeah, it's like a, like iridescent or whatever you'd call it. It changes in the light.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's the kick drum I have out on the road, and I got the bearing edge recut, and I actually love it. I got another one of my favorite kicks covered in a wrap that's like it.
Oh, sweet.
That's a more modern, it's a modern wrap, but it's Tangerine Satin Flame. So yeah. How do I turn around here?
So was that like a monster big kit originally?
Oh my God. Yeah. That was his 70s kit that he played with everybody on that kit, especially before I was born. And then I think that might have been out with Dylan and Leonard Cohen and like Patti LaBelle stuff and Bette Midler. He played with a lot of people. And then he played on the Broadway version of Tommy in the 90s. And he used that kit because, it was like throwback. It was of the time. And it was all single-headed concert toms and concert, and single-headed bass drums. And yeah, it was, I don't know how many toms. You had the toms over the hi-hat. Let's see. It was 6 or 7 toms, including the kit. Double bass back in the 60s, 70s, he used to play with 2 different size bass drums on a 22 and a 20. And, by the time I was growing up in the 80s, I don't think he liked that kit too much. So that was like the basement practice kit. And he had other kits with double heads and more modern kits, he was more into that. And, yeah, and after Tommy, since that was kind of a high-profile gig, he sold the kit, almost all of the kit to somebody. Like this was the kit used in Tommy, in the pit of Tommy.
Oh wow! Do you know who has it?
No, but that you bring up a good point. I should ask him if he knows at least the name of who he sold it to, because I've been casually looking for those drums. Like, I want to get more. And I've never seen that kit anywhere, like that color.
No, I haven't either.
Yeah.
We could probably find it. I bet we can get it back to you.
Oh, man. Yeah, I was so excited to get the kick drum. So the kit was massive. I don't know why he ever had so many drums, but he had the 22 got sold with the kit, and then 2 20s are still remaining.
Goodness.
I don't know if there was more than that. So I have the 2 20s. They didn't even have bearing edges on them at all.
What?
They're just cut.
That's
flat.
weird.
And as I remember growing up, I always was like, that's exactly what it sounded like. So I got I got like a Gretsch, like super rounded edge put on it, and I was just super excited to have the drum, and then it turned out to be one of my favorite sounding single-headed kicks that I have. So I have it on the road, and it's on a lot of the record.
Very cool. So what was your first kit that you got, that you purchased?
My first kit was a Tama. Was it Rockstar?
Yeah, that was a series. Right? They had Rockstar, they had Swing Star.
Swing Star and Rockstar. It was Tom a Rock Star in I always played my dad's drums. I was super lucky in that, like all the way through high school. But when I went to college, I got that. That was like a affordable kit. And I got
Was
a
it the
little
black one? Like everyone had a black one.
the black, covered black. Yeah.
Black
Wrapped.
pinstripe heads. Did you do that too?
No, I wasn't into that. I've always been an ambassador, coded ambassador guy. Yeah, that was my kit. Totally. What was your first kit?
The first real kit, because I went to a couple of toys. I had like a Sears catalog Gretsch Blackhawk kit, which was kind of cool. It just fell apart after a year. So my parents, I told them, I was very serious when I was 9 years old. They didn't believe me. He's like, I'm a drummer. Like I saw Will Calhoun on MTV and I'm like, I need drums. They didn't believe me. So they were like, all right, we'll get you the little toy thing, with a little 16-inch bass drum, the little tiny little thing. So I was playing Rush records on that thing. Just destroyed it. Then they got me the Blackhawk, but my first real kit was a Pearl Export. A red one. Yeah. I wanted to get the red because everyone had the black.
Nice.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I sold it to a bass player and then he sold it like 2 weeks later.
Yeah, those Pearl Exports, they're kind of good.
I wish I still had it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
So when did you get into the like hybrid kind of setup, percussion involved and all that?
That's a good question. It was with the Wood Brothers. I feel like I was really into experimenting growing up, like all through high school. It would drive my dad crazy because he's a working drummer and he has extra kits in the basement. He's got his practice kit set up and he'd come down there and I would have taken out like all his drums and hardware over and over. And I have like 4 stands mounted together with clamps and something hanging here. Like I loved to tinker and he had all the toys and he would get pissed. He'd be like, you have to put this stuff away. Like, and I have to practice. Like, I don't need this insane drum set to practice on. I need the kit that I set up to practice, like, something like a Broadway show. It was like had to be exact.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but then I feel like after college, I went through a phase where, especially when I moved to Nashville, it was like, okay, maybe one day I'll be one of the studio guys. So I need to be able to imitate anybody.
Mm.
And I was, like I'd show up at a session, I would have every sound I could think of that was like a traditional sound. You want a set of toms that sound like this. I brought that. I brought 3 different bass drums. And then I think it was the Wood Brothers, since the first gig I played with them was on the Shuitar. I just brought the Shuitar along. I tell you that story. That's a funny story too, but I'll wait. And they loved it. And I didn't play any drums on the first gig. They're just like, just play that thing. That thing's great. Just made up and like, it doesn't sound like anything else, And I think they started opening my mind to like, oh, you can just be yourself. And what I love to do is experiment. So over time, I think with them, I felt like, oh, it's gonna go across even better if I just bring in some wacky stuff that I just made. Mm. So I started making all my own shakers and I've had so many. The first tour I did with them, I built like a cocktail kind of kit bass drum, but it was a 22 and I would play both sides of it. That was like my floor tom and like, yeah, I think that's where it started. And I also, interestingly, found I started getting called a lot more to play on people's records once I started doing that. Whereas I had always come at it from like a fearful, like, I need to be able to play like anyone. And, if they say Steve Gadd, if they say Steve Jordan, I got you. I got your sounds. I got your feel.
Mhm.
To people calling me to do my thing, which is, of course, what we all really want. You know, we
Mhm.
want someone who gets called to be themselves. And it was so much easier. And then I could just I changed my point of view to like, if you hire me, I'm just going to show up with what I'm into. And you know, that's what you're getting.
Uh-huh.
And then people started saying, hey, I'm making this record and this artist, it was like a lot of bluegrass stuff because we get roped into like folk bluegrass world sometimes. And they'd be like, they don't want drums on their record. But I was like, I told them, I know this guy. If I call you, it's not going to be drum set. You'll do something different. And I think I just kind of embraced that. And I like doing that. So, yeah.
That's wild. This might be an impossible question to ask, but is that sound you play with the Wood Brothers, is that you 100%, or is that what you've created for the Wood Brothers? And if you weren't in the Wood Brothers, would you still be doing that?
I would be doing that, but with elements of other things. Yeah, I kind of vacillate. I get more and more comfortable pushing the Wood Brothers into new things and new sounds. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Wood Brothers catalog, but I feel like the sounds were really warm and mushier to start. Not in a bad way, but just like more roomy sounds. And that all worked really well. But I grew up really loving funk and a lot of stuff that grooves really hard is very short sounds. I've found in my life. And I've just been pushing in more of that direction, always thinking, ooh, this is going to be a stretch to fit into because I'm not just going to bring my stuff and be like, this is what I do. I bring things that inspire me, and then I'm suddenly in a musical situation with whoever I'm in, and I'm just going to find what fits, what palette complements that. So to answer your question directly, yeah, it's like yes and no. There are sounds like I make in other projects that I don't think fit in with the Wood Brothers. For instance, like I use a lot of very short snare sounds, but they're very, with the Wood Brothers, very muffled, just like short sounds. But anything that really cracks, like a cracking snare, I love doing that. And I just can't find a way to make that work with the tones Oliver gets on his guitar and the attack. Chris has a lot of attack on his bass. He's very aggressive. It's just too many
Interesting.
bright transients. And Oliver's voice has a lot of high end in it. Whenever I try to do that, I'm all excited. I'll bring out, when we do production rehearsals, I always have like a million snares, and I've been working on one and a sound, and then I end up going back to kind of the sounds I make, and I'm like, oh no, this fits in much better in the mix,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of everything's a compromise, and that's good. That's the way it should be. But I definitely I'm looking for some outlets to make some other sounds too that don't work well in that situation.
What is your live rig? What are the components?
It's that 20-inch Slingerland single-headed kick, and then lately I use, and this is going to sound wrong because I said no snares that don't crack, but I use one of those 13-inch piccolos, pearl piccolos that they made a million of in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
But it's tuned kind of low, and the snares are choked. So they choke the drum, so it does a kind of like, and then it has a lot of like 70s style muffling, like napkins taped down.
Yeah.
So it's a very short sound. It has a crack, but it doesn't have any ring. I'm getting really detailed, but I guess this is the dorky.
That's what we're here for. Yeah.
Dork out on it? Okay, cool. That's been really fun, especially as we play larger venues. Over time, my sounds get shorter because the length of decay in the room gets longer.
Mm.
So I hit this kick drum, and I like on that kick drum, it's just like a coated ambassador on the kick, and it's got a brick in it with towels rolled pressed hard against the head. So that's a short sound, but it still lasts 3 seconds in some of these venues.
Right.
You know, and the same with the snare. Like the venues are big enough that it makes everyone happier for me to be playing shorter sounds, and I like it because they're funkier, shorter sounds. All right, moving on. Hi-hats. Yeah, I guess people always comment on my hi-hats, but I'm just so used to them. They are 18s, I think.
Holy moly.
UFIP top, and then some no-name CB or some no-name bottom that's kind of heavier and kind of muffled with some tape padding on it. And I've gotten into this last year. I really love it. There's 2 rivets in the top hi-hat. Freaking loving that.
So what are 18s giving you?
I can't get anything else to work with the Wood Brothers. And trust me, I do not want to play 18-inch hi-hats. I'm playing underwater, like, just getting them to come up in time.
Yeah, right.
And then even the amount of air that pushes out when you close them, it's not like this nice, succinct, it's like, it's work. And that, so every year I'm trying to find a way to play smaller cymbals, and I just can't. For a while, I had like a stack of 3 cymbals with a China in there, because it works good to have a kind of trashy sound with them, but that was too trashy and lacked attack. And this top cymbal I have, they're big, but it just means that the pitch of the ring is low and warm, but it still has a lot of attack. So it doesn't sound like, it's not that. It's got a very bright stick attack to it. Tight sounding. But it's just, if I try to use 14s or something, it just like sticks out of our mix. And I don't know.
Okay. All right.
I can't handle it. And they love it too, those big cymbals. So I'm stuck with it.
And so don't the rivets just make it a little bit even more difficult to control?
Yeah. Sucks. We agree on struggle kind of being good for creativity too. So
I can dig that. Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, and with the rivets, I've found the regular rivets, when I'm just like, say, lightly using my foot to keep time on it, they kind of bounce around in an annoying after the fact way, So I've started using 2 little screws with a lock nut on them. And they're heavy enough that they just like maybe make one up and down when the cymbal closes on its own. But when I hit it, it still gives a nice.
Okay.
And then I have a little hi-hat tambourine I made on it too, which is adding more weight to it. But whenever I get rid of it, I'm missing it in the Wood Brothers thing. And then I've got an old, maybe they still make it, the Crash of Doom.
Oh yeah, right.
I got to go, I remember this was the coolest thing when I was like in high school or something, or maybe earlier, with my dad, because he was a Zildjian artist. So we got to go to the factory, and then I remember picking through like 30 Crashes of Doom that they had there and like trying them endlessly. I must have been driving them crazy. And I picked one that was really light Like you can bend it in your hands, and really wavy. They left off some process so it doesn't the last time it doesn't dry, solid or flat. And so it's a real wavy one, and it's our engineer's favorite cymbal too. Just as every time I play that, he's like, "What is that? Is that the wavy one?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's the wavy one." He's like, "That sounds great." And it's cracked twice. I just cut another piece out of it. So,
oh wow,
when that thing I got to start searching for another one.
You better sooner than later.
Yeah, that's been with me for like 30 years. And then I have a ride, which is a bigger ride with rivets in it. And that I got from this guy who has a cymbal store. First and only I've ever been in Cincinnati or something. And it's his own brand, and I love it. I wish I could plug him on your show here, but I can't remember the brand. Anyway, look that up, people. And then I have a pandero, which I use as my low tom, like a Brazilian tambourine.
Yeah.
It's the Stanton Moore LP pandero, and I just tune it kind of finger tight, and there's a mic real close to it, and it sounds like an 808.
Yeah, that's a cool sound. That's on all over the record, right? Is that the punchy kind of? Yeah.
Some of that, yeah, that's on there. Yeah, real punchy. Short, gets out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's like over the kick. And then right in front of me, in front of the snare drum, is some kind of second snare. Why I put it in front, I don't know. I put it in front. I've been using a little 10-inch one with a bunch of tambourine jangles on it lately. Either that or I use a 14 tuned, really kind of low and kind of more of an Al Green kind of sound. And then I got some percussion crap, either a pan or a cowbell and a washboard usually. And then I think that takes care of drum stuff. And then I got my keyboard rig where a floor tom world would be over there. Yeah. That's my rig.
That's a cool rig. So are you going back and adding keys to all the songs at this point, or is it just the ones that you recorded that way?
It's kind of getting everywhere. They're like seeping. They're like bleeding into everything. Yeah, it's true. So not on purpose. It's just we'll be in a sound check, bringing a song back, that we haven't played in a while. And it'll be either my idea or someone else's idea. Like, ooh, what if we did a thing where you played this, or maybe for an encore. I'll just be like, I'm just going to go out and play something. So I'll just start on keys, and then I'll lead into a song. And then I'll be like, ooh, it would be cool if I just played in this part. So I'll like try it during the show, and then we'll like work it out over time. Yeah.
So what does your left hand do when you're playing keys? Like, what is its role?
It's my left hand is annoyed at the greater responsibility that it has, yet realizes that one of the cool things is for it to not do the normal drum set things and not do as much. So I tend to do a lot with my hi-hat foot a little more. Like sometimes I'm keeping more time with that than I would in a regular groove. So it can just stay on the snare drum. And more, especially if I'm like taking a solo or something and I'm like wanting to, which has actually become comfortable for me. Like the groove just kind of happens by itself, like you're not thinking about it, and I could solo over it. But there reaches those places where you want the band to like support you under your solo. And the band is partly my left hand. And then it's like I'll start getting into some shit, hitting crashes, playing the ride and the snare drum, and trying to do fills that start. If I think about it, I'm like, I'm going to do this thing. It becomes a coordination nightmare. If I don't think about it and I just let it kind of happen in the moment, I'm surprised by the things I can pull off, and it just works. So yeah, I try to get more and more into being versatile with my left hand doing stuff.
Is some of that muscle memory from like comping behind your jazz solos, does that help?
Yeah, that stuff's easy. That stuff I don't have to think about. But yeah, like it just, that's happening great. Like that more subtle, like putting in grace notes, maybe every once in a while going with my right hand or answering it, going against it. That stuff happens, and I love that. That's like a comfort zone for me. That kind of happens automatic. But when I'm like, all right, man, we need to kick it up to the next notch, and like just be crashes and like, you know, like riding on the crash, and like I'm like, woo, like I feel like I'm gonna fall off the tightrope sometimes.
Oh man.
And I will say, those nights where I feel like I'm nearly falling apart, every night it's like the front of house, Vic's engineer and Oliver and Chris and our LD come back and be like, that was the best solo. And I was like, thought I was gonna lose it during that. That's always the one, you know, like when you're right on the edge.
Yeah, sure.
Sounds a little more punk and inspired.
You ever play pipe organ or B3 with pedals?
I know, you would think.
I should try it when it'll come out.
Oh man, that pedal on the B3. Whew, yeah, I messed around for a minute. It's a whole nother world. Yeah, I kind of don't want any more instruments that I'm then going to feel like I have to practice to maintain.
Back to that. Yeah.
Like I love playing bass, and I'm just like, you know what? No, I don't think I'm going to go there.
Well, we're getting towards the end of the hour. You almost asked. Usually, my last question is, "What was your first snare drum?" So let me ask that.
My first snare drum, personally, not ones I played that were my dad's. Oh, hold on. You know, it was either that Pearl 3-inch by 13 Maple Piccolo, which could be why I love it so much, just because it was my first snare. Or, you know what I mean? Like, it might just be emotional.
I had one of those and I sold it like a dummy.
They're cool. Well, there's a million of them out there. And they're not very expensive. I think it's one of the best drums ever made, actually. It might be this one.
Look at the lugs
this
on
was
that
like
thing.
A big purchase. Yeah. Pearl Masters Custom, just 14 by 6.5. Yeah, that might have been it. I love that drum. It's a great drum.
You still play it, or is it there for nostalgia?
Still played. Yeah. I used it on a session just a couple days ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, sweet. I got what's another? I wanted to ask for some listening recommendations, because we've got the Wood Brothers discography. Is there anything else that we should tell people to check out?
Oh, of stuff that I've done.
Yeah.
I wish I had a list ready. You could check out Seth Walker records. Seth Walker, Walker. I've produced and played on his last few records, and those are cool records. A guy named JP Ruggieri just released a record. JP Ruggier. Ruggieri, I at the end. Anyway, that's a cool record. I'm just thinking of things I recently did. So that's a good start.
Sweet. And is it the plan for you to be out for the rest of the year with the Wood Brothers so people can check out on the road? I saw you got a bunch of dates.
Yeah. Yeah, the record's just coming out, and we're leaving on Monday for another tour, and we're kind of on and off 2 weeks out, 2 weeks home forever. So,
oh, that's just a perpetual cycle for you guys.
That's just perpetual. So we'll be in a city or town near you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and geeking out and let me ask all the nerdy questions.
That was fun. I love it. Anytime.
And that is it for this week's episode. As always, I appreciate you listening. If you do enjoy the show, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Drop us a 5-star rating on whatever version of the podcast you're getting. Give us a review. The show is growing, but I would love to see it grow even bigger. And it only with the help of you sharing the show can we make that happen. You can always reach me at drumcandypodcast@gmail.com if you have show ideas or questions. And we will see you next week. Have a good one.